Hello everyone and welcome back to Football Manager 2018 and the second part of this experiment where we're seeing what would happen if you had the perfect goalkeeper in Football Manager 2018. So as you can see in the last part of this experiment, which you should go and see if you haven't already, our player Scott Maloney did manage to win a few competitions. He got a Carabao Cup, a Community Shield, a Premier League and an FA Cup, and also finished as runner-up of the Champions League. So within about 1 or 2 seasons with Manchester City, he nearly won every competition available to him. He's also made his international debut with England and will continue to do great things there, I'm sure. You can see he's already got 13 caps. We will have a look at how he's done with England at the end of this episode, so do let me know if there are things you want to see through this experiment going forward, and drop a like on the video if you're enjoying this and if you want to see another part. That's the best way to let me know you guys are enjoying this experiment, otherwise we can do something else. And if you've got ideas, let me know down in the comments. And finally, make sure to subscribe for the next part of this when it comes out in a couple of days time. But let's kick this off here. We're going to go forward 5 years today and have a look through what he manages to achieve each season. It's incredibly likely he will remain at Man City for the rest of his career because he is the perfect goalkeeper. It's going to continue on. I'm not going to change anything about it. I know some of you pointed out eccentricity and things like that, and not necessarily good traits to have for a goalkeeper. But the idea was to give him 20 for everything. I'm going to leave it like that. We'll just see how he performs. It's not going to make a massive amount of difference, I don't think, because he should have nowhere near these stats anyway. And I think without a doubt he will be the best goalkeeper in the world for the entire duration of his career now. So let's go forward 1 year and see if he does manage to finally win that Champions League title. Well, here we are 1 year ahead of time. We're going to have a look through the Manchester City campaign. Obviously, they won the league unbeaten recently, so having that great goalkeeper definitely paying dividends. And you can see here a nice, brilliant streak of green to start the season off, including winning the Community Shield on penalties against Manchester United. So I'm sure that Maloney in goal definitely pulled his weight there and helped them win the penalty shootout. They then had a few great clean sheets and victories to kick off the season before conceding against Brighton. They beat Roma, Derby in the Carabao Cup, beat Valencia in the Champions League, beat Sporting as well, and then lost their first game against Man United. Losing that derby at home will have been a little bit difficult. Maloney letting 3 in there, and then lost to Watford in the Carabao Cup, so no win there this season. Lost to Wolves as well, which is quite disappointing, but then a nice run of clean sheets. That's 5 clean sheets in a row for them against difficult teams as well. Roma, Liverpool and Chelsea and Valencia as well, away from home. A couple of draws, but then carried on winning really, won their Champions League group without any problems through the 5th round of the FA Cup as well. Lots of clean sheets here. Drew with Atletico Madrid away from home in the first leg of the Champions League. Lost to United for the 2nd time that season, so possible that United might be taking the title this time. And in the return leg in the Champions League, lost 1-0 at home. That's really poor. Maloney getting a 6.7. The entire defence not doing well there. So out of the Champions League, no Champions League this time. Still going in the FA Cup though, before being knocked out by Liverpool at the semi-final stage. So the question is, did they manage to win the Premier League? And you can see they are the current title holders. So it is another Premier League title for them. 3 points clear of a 91-point Manchester United. That is a really tough title race. So doing well to win that with 30 wins. And their 3rd title in a row with Maloney in goal. Not bad at all there. 3 consecutive titles. I'm sure there will be more to come. I'm going to go forward 2 years now so we can skip through them quite quickly. We'll do England in one big batch at the end of the experiment rather than do just a few games each season. So let's go forward 2 years and see how he gets on. Well, with 2 more years into the future, you can see he's currently valued at £45.5 million, which is a lot for a goalkeeper. Earning 220 grand a week with a contract for another 4 years, so must have recently signed that. If we go to Man City and have a look at their senior squad schedule, drop back a couple of years, then you can see that they started out with a win over Man United in the Community Shield. Lost to Wolves early on, seem to be their bogey team at the minute, but then a really long unbeaten run, including through the Champions League. and through the Carabao Cup quarter-final where they won 3-0. A lot of clean sheets for Maloney here as well. Won in the FA Cup and definitely through against Huddersfield in the Carabao Cup semi-final. In the Champions League, lost 3-0 away from home to Monaco. That's really poor. But did win the Carabao Cup final 1-0 there. Marco Asensio with the goal, keeping the clean sheet. But knocked out of the Champions League again at the first knockout stage. That's really disappointing. 5-4 defeat on aggregate. After doing all of the work early on, though, went 4-0 up, completely overturning Monaco's 3-0 lead. But then conceded 2 goals in the second half to get knocked out. Really poor that. Through to the FA Cup final, Moise Kean getting 2 goals for Man City, but in the final lost 2-1 to Liverpool. So a disappointing season. They did win the Premier League this time to take their 4th title in a row, but only the Community Shield in the Premier League is disappointing, really. The following season didn't even get the Community Shield, lost to Liverpool 2-0. Good unbeaten start to the season before losing to Man United 2-1. But through the Carabao Cup quarter-final, won their Champions League group as well. Won in their first leg against United in the Carabao Cup, a difficult opponent there, and through against Blackburn in the FA Cup. In the return leg, lost 3-1, but I think went through on away goals. Won in the FA Cup 4th round. Champions League first knockout round, won 2-0 away from home. And won the Carabao Cup as well in extra time against Liverpool. Players getting sent off on both sides there. And in the return leg against Benfica, won 3-0 too. So into the quarterfinals of the Champions League and into the semi-finals of the FA Cup after beating Middlesbrough. Lost 4-2 away from home against Leverkusen, which is a poor result there. But in the return leg, won 3-0. So into the semi-finals of the Champions League and through against Liverpool in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. Won 1-0 away from home against Bayern in the first leg of the semi-finals of the Champions League. Then lost to Leicester, beat Brighton and drew with Bayern. So they're into the Champions League final and the FA Cup final, but lost to Chelsea in the FA Cup final and then lost to Chelsea again in the Champions League final. Can you imagine how heartbreaking that must have been for them? 2-1 in both finals. I mean, in the FA Cup, they were 2-0 up in 3 minutes. Couldn't turn it back. Went 2-0 up for Chelsea in the Champions League final as well. So that is really, really disappointing that they've managed to throw away everything in that season and didn't win the title either. Finishing second to United by 7 points. Can you imagine a more disappointing season than that? But did win the title the season before. So if we have a look at our main man, Scott Maloney now, go to the senior squad of City and click on Maloney. Have a look at his history here. You can see a lot of clean sheets, 20 clean sheets in the league in his last season there. And if we have a look, you can see he had 32 in 61, 26 in 55 and 24 in 54. He's getting one every other game pretty much. If we look at his milestones, then we'll see what he's done with England if we do that. So let's maybe look at that later. But so far, everything going pretty well for Maloney. We'll go forward 2 more years now, see how he does with his club, and then we'll see how he's done with England in his career up to now. But he's already, if we look at his profile, he's already about 25 years old now. So we've already gone ahead 10 years through his career, or will have by the end of this experiment. He is getting on a little bit. But as a goalkeeper, I imagine he will probably keep going to the age of 40, if not past that point. So a lot more to look forward to. Let's go forward 2 more years and see if he can finally win that Champions League title. We are now 2 years further ahead, and this is where we left off last time, or this is the season from where we left off last time. And as you can see, not the best start, a draw and then a defeat to Brighton away from home before going on a nice long winning streak with a lot of clean sheets in there for Scott Maloney. He only conceded 2 goals after that defeat across about 10 matches, which is quite impressive, before losing to Burnley and United. They keep losing to United in the league. But doing well in the Champions League, a couple more difficult results against Arsenal and Chelsea. Through the Carabao Cup quarter-final on penalties against Liverpool, also beating PSG away, which is quite nice. Good win over Bournemouth in the first leg before losing the second leg, but still getting through with their goal advantage. And then through in the FA Cup and losing to Barcelona away in the first knockout round leg there, 3-1 defeat. but won the Carabao Cup final. Some revenge over United there on penalties, managing to do it. Leroy Sané getting the goal late on, conceding as well, but managing to win on penalties. And then against Barcelona in the return fixture, they did win 1-0, but it was not enough to get past that first knockout round where they have struggled in the past. Through in the FA Cup semi-finals, 3-0 against Bournemouth, and in the final, they lost to Chelsea, which they've done so often. So another mixed bag for them, really. They didn't win the Premier League that season either, and actually just the Carabao Cup to take home, which is not what Scott Maloney would have signed up for when he first joined them. The following season, doing quite a bit better at the start here, with just one goal conceded and then another one against Burnley, keeping so many clean sheets. It's amazing they aren't winning more competitions. Through in the Carabao Cup quarter-final, 3-0 against Wigan, and in the semi-final, beating Liverpool 3-0 in the first leg, drawing in the second leg, so another Carabao Cup final. Fifth round replay here in the FA Cup, but beat Sporting 4-0 away in the first knockout round. Won the Carabao Cup final 3-0 against Chelsea away from home as well, before then losing to them in the FA Cup. So another Carabao Cup, but out of the FA Cup. They're at least in the Champions League quarter-finals, and the league campaign going very, very well. Before getting knocked out by Real Madrid. So they drew 2-2 at home. Kessie getting a late equaliser for them, but we're always going to struggle taking a high score draw away from home. And they were knocked out. Their league position also not that great based on the number of draws that we've just seen. If we go to the stages screen, drop back to this season here, you can see United actually finished on 100 points this season, matching City's record. A good 14 points off the top, but in solid second place. And the following season, finishing third, but just 5 points off the top this time, which is a little bit frustrating for them, that United was so weak, but they weren't able to take advantage. It means that Scott Maloney has actually not had the best time. He is now their key player, valued at £52 million for a goalkeeper as well. You can see his career stats here, getting a lot of clean sheets, but it's just not enough. He got 24 clean sheets last season and 17 the year before that. Not quite hitting the peak of the 32 he got back in 24-25 with a 7.18 average rating, which is just so impressive. If we look at his milestones and his competitions wins, actually, let's have a quick look at England before we do that, because you can see already that they've managed to have some success. Currently managed by Matt Harrold, who clearly was a player before becoming a manager. He's only 42 years old and is now England manager. If we look at that senior squad schedule and go back to the very, very start, Scott Maloney wasn't playing for a few seasons here, so it doesn't matter too much. You can see in the World Cup, went out to Russia early on, not doing that well in the European League either. But then a very successful qualifying campaign. I'm pretty sure that he will have been playing around this point. And then in the European Championship, managed to beat Romania in the second round, but beaten 5-1 by Poland in the quarterfinals. Typical English disappointment there. I don't think anybody would have expected that. And then the World Cup qualifiers went on. They did get into the International League semi-finals, lost 2-0 to Germany before beating France to finish third in that competition. But the World Cup qualification going very, very well for them. And then in the World Cup, lost to Spain 2-1, beat Costa Rica, but then lost 4-2 to Peru and got knocked out at the group stage. This is looking oh so familiar. Division A of the European League going very, very well. And in the semi-finals, lost to Holland before securing third place against France again. 3-0 there. Perfect European qualification, nearly just that draw with the Czech Republic. And then in the European Championships, a 2-0 win over Turkey, a 1-0 win over Holland, drawing with Ukraine, but then beating Belgium 3-1, beating France 1-0 in extra time in the quarterfinals, and then they won on penalties against Italy in the semi-finals to set up an extra time victory over Germany. They went 2-0 up in extra time. Harry Kane with the second goal there before Etterling got one back. But they've won the European Championship. Scott Maloney has a major international tournament in the bag. They lost in the semi-finals of the International League again to Germany, and actually didn't even finish third this time. But they were in the Confederations Cup as European champions, beat Costa Rica, beat Peru, some revenge there, and beat South Korea before getting knocked out by the USA and then securing third in that competition. They should have beaten the USA really. And then the following year, another World Cup campaign here, beat Saudi Arabia 6-0, 3 for Harry Kane there, and beat Colombia. Managed to beat Russia 3-0, beat Germany in the World Cup quarterfinals 1-0, an own goal knocking Germany out before being beaten 4-2 by Spain and then 5-1 by France. Really humiliating results there. And in the most current season, you can see they won on penalties against France in the International League semi-final. Scott Maloney getting a 7.7 rating, and in the final a 3-2 win, a 5.8 for Scott Maloney in that final. Doesn't matter, he's won another bit of international silverware with England there. So he's won the International League and the European Championship. If we look at those milestones finally, you can see his career so far pretty successful. He got the Carabao Cup, Community Shield, Premier League, FA Cup, Community Shield again, runner-up in the Champions League of course, another Premier League title, and another one there, so that's 3 already. Carabao Cup as well, European Championship, another Carabao Cup, which seems to be his competition and Manchester City's, and then that European International League. It is quite a trophy haul for a man who is just 27 years old. He's still got so many years left at the top level. So let me know in the comments, do you think that he can win a World Cup, and will he eventually win that Champions League? I mean, it surely has to happen. Do drop a like on the video if you want to see another part to this experiment, and maybe let me know how far ahead you'd like me to go next time. Make sure to subscribe for that video when it comes out in a couple of days' time. But until next time, see ya.